afternoon. This is NBCA News number 1 for Thursday, September 11th, 1986. We have 23 reports for you, including 3 headlines. The House nears a vote on tough penalties for drug pushers. Story number 3, flood hits the upper Midwest. Story number 4. The stock market drops sharply and heavy trading closes down 86 points, a record. Story number 6, and 5 sports stories. We're now ready for transmission.
This knitting together that is emanating from the human brain is accelerating at such a rate that we are rapidly going to become unrecognizable to ourselves. The end point, which I have come to feel is correct, is the end point 67 years, 104.5 days after the Hiroshima blast. And that would be dawn of the 16th day of November in 2012. Now, I had worked all this out, and the thin thread on which I am here in a conference devoted to the Mayans is that after I had worked all this out, I discovered that the long count of the Mayan, the calendar of which you have heard so much, contains 13 baktuns. Now, the emergence of Mayan civilization as we currently understand it is around late in Baktun 6, and the complete collapse of the Mayan is in around the middle of Baktun 11. But their whole calendar was generated from the end of Baktun 13. There is no Baktun 14. They said, that's it. That's the end. The end of Baktun 13 is the winter solstice of 2012, 34 days later than the date I reached through this series of involvements with the I Ching. But then I discovered there's what's called the Thompson correction. The Thompson correction is a different reading on certain calendrical material which would locate the end of Baktun 13 only 4 days after the date that I had chosen. So the question seemed to me then, what is it about psilocybin mushrooms that a civilization in Mesoamerica in the 8th and 9th century and an individual in California in the 20th century would both, through an elaborate series of mathematical contortions, different mathematical contortions, reach the same point in time? What is happening there? And we were talking last night about how the my little story about what happened to the Mayans, to the Maya, and Peter pretty much agreed, was around 970 and probably at Copan, which was the Alexandria of the Mayan world. It's where the mathematics and this, these things were brought to their peak. They figured it out. They figured it out. And they ended the long count. It was obviously ended as an order. It took about 20 years to emanate out from Copan and to reach the most remote Mayan centers, Quirigua and Palenque and so forth. But within 30 years, the long count had been ended, the stela had been pushed over face down in the grass, the cities emptied, and the Maya returned to being primitive agricultural pastoralists. I think it was because they figured it out. They saw what was coming. And once you have figured it out, the curious thing about this notion I'm propounding is that it carries no obligation. It is a way of making you free by admitting you are more deterministically bound than you ever dreamed. You know, you had to go into Hadrian's hamburger joint. It was settled when Hadrian invaded Scotland that you had to go into that hamburger joint. And so we are bearing an unnecessary burden of guilt and responsibility. We are living in a cosmos, not a chaos. The universe is doing what it wants to do. It is calling forth the kind of novelty that it wants to call forth. The fact that we cannot understand its purpose is our problem, you know, and we are not its victims. In these short epochs, what is happening is something that I think can only be understood by having recourse to the metaphors of alchemy. Alchemy and modern science, these are anticipations of taking control of energy, of binding, as James Joyce says, all space in a nutshell. It's where what the concrescence is the flowing together of everything in a higher spatial dimension. We mentioned last night the saying in the I Ching, if this sacrifice is correct, the person who correctly understands this sacrifice can hold the universe in the palm of their hand like a spinning marble. This is absolutely true. It's a statement of physics. It is not a metaphor, an analogy, or anything else. It is that reality is being knitted together into a spinning marble. Everything but that spinning marble is an illusion. It has many reflections in linear history, which is like the shadow cast into three-dimensional space-time by this higher dimensional reality. It is the telos at the end of time. Its modern manifestation is the flying saucer. The flying saucer haunts time like a ghost. It only exists at the end of the historical process, yet it is somehow co-present, spread throughout the historical process. It is the proof that the apocalyptic moment exists. Another metaphor for this concrescence, this spinning marble, is the Holy Grail, or the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is an object which is made out of mind. It's called, one gloss on it was called the Sophic Hydrolith, the water thought stone. It is something which has the quality of mind and matter. And this is what the human function is, I think, is through Knos to eliminate the distinction between mind and matter, to free us into the imagination. That's where we're going when the novelty wave runs to zero and we are released into this transhistorical space. It is the imagination, and it will not be miraculous. It will be created by us, through a number of disciplines, technologies, ideas, and innate abilities that we cannot currently hope to do more than glimpse, because we are so far back in the historical continuum from where this thing is going to happen in 2012. So basically, this is a funny explanation of almost everything. They say when you create a funny explanation of almost everything, you have to be careful that you don't unexplain a whole bunch of things. And I don't think this unexplains too much, because it is not an extension of a current paradigm. In other words, it is not physics. It says nothing about particle physics or quantum mechanics or anything that. It talks about time, which is not matter. We have been obsessed with matter for millennia, and thought of time as just something passing by, couldn't really get a handle on it. But maturity will mean getting a handle on it.